Adela Pierce adjusted the weight of Zara and Nia in her arms while waiting for the bus that would take her back home. The 4-month-old twin girls slept fitfully, occasionally stirring against the biting November wind that cut through the deserted road on the outskirts of Atlanta. It was another exhausting day in her new reality as a widow, trying to balance her paralegal work downtown with caring for 2 infants who still felt like strangers to her grief-numbed hands. That's when she heard the heart-wrenching sobs. She turned and saw an elderly white couple embracing on the bus stop bench, crying as if the world had collapsed on them. The woman, with soft white-gray hair and around 68 years old, had a face red and swollen from tears. The man beside her, slightly older with distinguished silver hair, tried to comfort her, but his own weathered face was visibly shaken too. Adela hesitated for a long moment. Since losing Marcus to a drunk driver 4 months ago, she had avoided unnecessary contact with people, especially white strangers. The pain was still too raw, and caring for Zara and Nia alone already demanded every ounce of energy she had left. Besides, this was the South. A black woman approaching elderly white folks in distress came with complications she didn't need. Her sister Renee's voice echoed in her mind. Asterisk, keep your head down, girl. Their problems ain't your problems, asterisk. But something about their absolute desperation pierced through both her grief and her caution. Excuse me, she said, approaching slowly. Is everything all right? The woman lifted her tear-stained face, momentarily surprised to see a black woman addressing them. Then her expression crumbled into gratitude. Oh dear, I'm so sorry to bother you, the woman said, voice trembling. It's just. She couldn't finish before breaking down again. The elderly man cleared his throat. Our daughter brought us here. Said she'd come back for us in an hour. That was 7 hours ago. Adela felt her stomach tighten. She looked around at the empty road. The bus stop sat isolated between neighborhoods, far from any stores or homes. 7 hours. And you've tried calling her? Our phones don't work anymore, dear, the woman explained, composing herself slightly. And we don't have her new number memorized. I'm Marilyn Harrison, and this is my husband, James Harrison. Adela Pierce. And these are my daughters, Zara and Nia. Marilyn's eyes softened looking at the sleeping infants. What beautiful babies. Twins. You must have your hands full. Is your husband? She trailed off, sensing the answer. The question hit like a physical blow. I'm a widow. I take care of them alone. Oh, sweetheart, Marilyn breathed. How terrible for someone so young. And here we are, burdening you with our troubles. No, please. You have every right to be worried. Adela looked at the darkening sky. The last bus had passed 2 hours ago. Against every instinct of self-preservation, against the exhaustion threatening to pull her under, she made a choice. Look, I have a car. I can take you wherever you need to go. James and Marilyn exchanged glances, surprise, relief, and perhaps discomfort at accepting help from a black woman. We couldn't ask that of you, James said. You already have your own burdens. It's no trouble. Where do you need to go? Our daughter said she'd moved us to a house in Decatur, Marilyn replied uncertainly. Near the old courthouse. Victoria said it was all arranged. Adela knew the area, more than 30 miles away. She'd be getting home well past the twins' feeding time. But looking at this elderly couple abandoned on a bench, she couldn't walk away. That's fine. I can take you there. Let me get the girls settled. Walking to her old Honda Civic, Adela noticed they carried only one small worn suitcase each and a few plastic grocery bags. For a move, it seemed impossibly little. Is this all your luggage? She asked while securing the twins into their car seats. Marilyn's face fell. Victoria said the new house came fully furnished. That we should only bring personal items. Something prickled at the back of Adela's paralegal-trained mind. Minimal belongings. Vague destination. A daughter who disappeared. None of it made sense. But she chose not to press further, not yet. The drive to Decatur began in tense silence. James gave directions from memory, but as they entered the neighborhood, his uncertainty became obvious. It should be on Sycamore Street, or was it Maple? He muttered, leaning forward. Victoria said it had a blue door. Or maybe gray. They drove up and down residential streets for 20 minutes. No house matched the vague description. No one at the addresses they tried had heard of Victoria Harrison. In the back seat, Zara began to cry. Then Nia joined her, their wails filling the small car. Adela's shoulders tensed. She was exhausted. The babies were overdue for feeding, and this wild goose chase was going nowhere. "Here, may I?" Marilyn asked softly, reaching for Zara with practiced hands. Adela hesitated, then nodded. Marilyn lifted the infant with surprising grace, gently bouncing her while humming a soft melody. Within moments, Zara quieted. Marilyn shifted to soothe Nia with her other hand, and soon both babies had settled into calm whimpers. "You have a gift," Adela said quietly, watching through the rearview mirror. "I raised 4 children," Marilyn replied with sad smile. "Some things you never forget." After another 15 minutes of fruitless searching, James's voice cracked. "I don't understand. Victoria was so specific. She showed us pictures." Adela pulled over and turned to face them. Their faces showed confusion shifting into dawning fear, the terrible realization that something was very wrong. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison," she said gently, "I don't think we're going to find the house tonight. It's getting late, the babies need feeding, and you both look exhausted." She took a breath, knowing she was about to complicate her life immeasurably. "How about you come to my place for the night? Tomorrow morning, we can figure this out properly." "Oh, we couldn't impose," James protested, but his voice held desperation. "It's not an imposition. I have a guest room. It's small, but it's warm and safe." Marilyn looked at her husband, then at Adela. "Are you sure? We're strangers, and you've already done so much. You need help. I can help. That's all that matters right now." The drive to Adela's modest house in a working-class black neighborhood took 20 minutes. In the rearview mirror, she could see James holding Marilyn's hand, both of them staring out the window with expressions that mixed hope and fear as they entered her community, James and Marilyn visibly registering that they were crossing into unfamiliar territory. And in that moment, Adela Pierce, young, black, widowed, and barely surviving herself, had no idea that this simple act of compassion would unravel a story of betrayal, challenge every wall she'd built around her heart, and ultimately transform her broken life into something she never thought possible again. A family that transcended every boundary she'd ever known. Inside her small 2-bedroom home, they stood awkwardly in the living room. Adela saw their eyes take in the family photos, Marcus's face smiling from the walls, pictures of their wedding, of happier times that now felt like someone else's life. "Your husband was very handsome," Marilyn said softly, looking at the largest photo. "He was everything," Adela replied, her voice catching. She cleared her throat. "The guest room is this way. Bathroom is across the hall. I need to feed the girls, but make yourselves comfortable." As she settled into the nursery's rocking chair with Zara, she heard quiet voices from the guest room, James and Marilyn speaking in hushed tones. She caught fragments. "So kind. Didn't have to. What are we going to do?" Later, after both babies were fed, changed, and finally asleep, Adela found the elderly couple sitting at her small kitchen table. Marilyn had made tea, finding her way around the kitchen with the instinct of someone who'd spent decades homemaking. "I hope you don't mind," Marilyn said, gesturing to the cups. "It helps calm my nerves." "Not at all." Adela sat down, bone-tired but knowing they needed to talk. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, I work as a paralegal. And something about your situation isn't adding up." James and Marilyn exchanged another glance, this time heavy with shame. "We think," James began slowly, "we think our daughter may have done something terrible." And as the night deepened around them, in a small house where a young black widow and an elderly white couple sat at a table sharing tea, the truth began to emerge. 2 kinds of abandonment, one by death, one by betrayal, had found each other across every divide that should have kept them apart. Sometimes compassion transcends caution. Sometimes family begins with strangers on a bench. And sometimes the courage to help someone else becomes the first step toward healing yourself. Adela woke to the smell of coffee and something she hadn't experienced in 4 months, the sound of someone else moving in her kitchen. She rushed downstairs, heart pounding with an irrational hope that somehow Marcus had come back, that the last 4 months had been a nightmare. But it was Marilyn at the stove, wearing one of Adela's aprons, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "Oh, I hope you don't mind, dear," Marilyn said, turning with an apologetic smile. "I couldn't sleep, and I hate being idle. James is still resting." Adela stood in the doorway, frozen. Her kitchen, which had been a place of microwaved dinners and mounting dishes since Marcus died, looked alive again. The counters were clean. The table was set. Steam rose from fresh coffee. No, it's fine, Adela managed, her voice thick. You didn't have to. It's the least I can do. Marilyn gestured to the twins' bouncer seats. May I? Adela nodded, and Marilyn lifted Zara with the confidence of someone who'd held countless babies. She settled into the rocking chair, gently bouncing as she hummed. Zara, who usually fussed at this hour, remained calm. You're magic with them, Adela said, pouring coffee with shaking hands. This simple domestic scene, another woman caring for her babies, warmth in her kitchen, was breaking something open inside her. Just experience. I had 4 children, 3 grandchildren. Marilyn's voice caught. Though I don't know if they'll speak to me after what's happened. James appeared in the doorway, looking older and more frail in the morning light. He sat heavily at the table, hands trembling around his coffee cup. We need to tell you the truth, he said quietly. All of it. Over breakfast, with Adela holding Mia and listening with her paralegal's trained ear, the story emerged in painful fragments. Victoria, their youngest daughter, had come to them 6 months ago with an opportunity. As senior care investment, they'd sign over their home equity and savings to fund a care facility development. In return, they'd get guaranteed housing, medical care for life, and triple their investment within 2 years. She had documents, presentations, James said, his voice hollow. It looked legitimate. She said she'd been working with developers, that this was a chance to secure our future. How much? Adela asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Everything, Marilyn whispered. The house we'd owned for 30 years. Our savings. About $350,000 total. Adela's stomach dropped. And the documentation? Victoria has it all. The deed transfer, the investment agreements, everything. She said she needed to file it with the development company. James looked at Adela with devastated eyes. We trusted her. She's our daughter. Adela's paralegal instincts were screaming. Mr. Harrison, what address did Victoria give for this development company? He recited it from memory. Adela grabbed her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. 5 minutes of searching confirmed what she already knew. That's a UPS store mailbox. The company doesn't exist. She looked at their stricken faces. I'm so sorry, but this is elder fraud. Criminal exploitation. Marilyn began to cry silently, tears running down her weathered face. James just stared at the table, his hands clenched into fists. How much was your house actually worth? Adela asked gently. The county assessment was $425,000 last year, James said. It's in a good neighborhood, well maintained. Adela pulled up property records. Her heart sank further. She sold it 3 weeks ago for $200,000. 47% below market value. The new owners have already taken possession. The sound that came from James was somewhere between a sob and a roar of anguish. 50 years of work, of building a life, stolen by their own child. I need to call someone, Adela said, already reaching for her phone. A colleague who specializes in elder law. Keisha Williams answered on the second ring. Adela explained the situation in crisp legal terms while James and Marilyn sat shell-shocked at her table. It's textbook elder exploitation, Keisha confirmed. Criminal fraud, possibly felony theft. We need to file a police report immediately, and I can start the legal proceedings to try to recover their assets. But Adela, you need to know, these cases take time. And the money's usually gone. How gone? Victoria Harrison purchased a Mercedes-Benz 2 weeks ago. Cash. She's purchased plane tickets to Costa Rica. She's spent approximately $80,000 already that I can trace in 5 minutes. Give her another month, and there'll be nothing left to recover. Adela thanked Keisha and ended the call. She looked at the elderly couple who'd aged a decade in the last hour. We can fight this, she said firmly. We will fight this. But you need to know. The doorbell rang, cutting her off. Adela frowned. Nobody visited her anymore. She opened the door to find her sister Renee standing there, holding a casserole dish. Renee's eyes widened as she took in Adela's appearance, rumpled clothes, exhausted face, the sounds of babies and unfamiliar voices coming from inside. Girl, Why haven't you been answering your phone? I was worried. Renee pushed past her into the house, then stopped dead. James and Marilyn sat at the kitchen table. Two elderly white people in her sister's house. In their neighborhood. What the hell is this? Renee's voice went cold. Renee, this isn't. Oh, I see exactly what this is. Renee's eyes flashed with anger. You taking in strays now? White strays. They needed help, Adela said quietly, feeling shame and anger war in her chest. Help. Renee laughed, a harsh sound. Della, have you lost your mind? You got two babies to feed, you barely sleeping, you can barely take care of yourself, and you bringing white folks into your house. They were abandoned. I don't care if they were abandoned, adopted, or dropped from the damn sky. Renee slammed the casserole dish on the counter. You know how many black folks in this neighborhood need help? How many of our people are struggling? But here you are, playing savior too. Renee, stop. Adela's voice was steel. They're victims of elder abuse. Their own daughter robbed them. And that's your problem, how? Renee stepped closer, lowering her voice but not her anger. Della, listen to yourself. You think they'd do this for you? You think if the situation was reversed, they'd taken a black woman and her babies? Adela glanced back at James and Marilyn, who sat frozen, clearly hearing every word. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. Renee grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the front door. Let me talk to you. Outside. Now. On the porch, Renee rounded on her. Are you crazy? Girl, Marcus just died. You barely holding it together. You don't need to be taking on somebody else's problems, especially not white folks' problems. They're not white folks' problems, they're human problems. Wake up. Renee's voice rose. You think the community gonna understand this? You think they're gonna see you playing house with white people and not have something to say? You already got people talking about how you isolating yourself, how you not coming to church, not answering calls. Because I'm grieving. And now you're doing this? Renee shook her head. Della, I love you. You're my sister. But I can't support this. I can't watch you betray your community like this. Betray? Adela felt something crack inside her. Betray by showing compassion? By helping people who need help. By helping them when your own people need you. Renee's eyes filled with tears. You think I'm not struggling? You think Mama's not asking about you? You think the whole family isn't worried sick? But instead of leaning on us, instead of being with your people, you're playing hero to strangers who wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. You don't know that. Yes, I do. And so do you if you're honest. Renee stepped back, her face hardening. So here's how it's gonna be. It's either this, she gestured toward the house, or it's your family, your community, us. Choose. Adela felt the weight of the ultimatum like a physical blow. Everything in her wanted to fold, to send James and Marilyn away, to avoid the judgment and isolation that would come. But then she remembered their faces on that bench. 7 hours of abandonment, the betrayal by their own child, the desperate gratitude when she'd offered help. She remembered Marcus's voice. Asterisk, be the kind of person who shows up, Della. That's all that matters in the end. Asterisk. I already chose, Adela said quietly. I chose compassion. I chose to help people who need help, regardless of what color they are. Renee's face twisted with hurt and anger. Then you chose them over us. No, Renee. I chose conscience over fear. I chose doing what's right over what's easy. You're a sellout, Renee spat. A race traitor. I'm a human being helping other human beings. Renee stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked down the steps. At the sidewalk, she looked back. When this blows up in your face, and it will, don't come crying to me. Don't come crying to the family. You made your choice. Adela watched her sister drive away, taking with her the last connection to her old life, her community, her support system. Inside, James and Marilyn stood in the hallway, faces stricken with guilt. We should go, James said immediately. We can't let you sacrifice your family for us. Adela closed the door and looked at them, really looked at them. Two abandoned people who'd lost everything. Two people who needed someone to choose them when their own family wouldn't. You're not going anywhere, she said firmly. We're going to fight this together. And in that moment, standing in her doorway with her grief, her babies crying upstairs, and two elderly strangers who'd become her responsibility, Adela Pierce made the choice that would define everything to come. She chose love over fear. She chose helping over hiding. And she chose to believe that family could be built on something stronger than blood. It could be built on the revolutionary act of showing up when everyone else walked away. The arrangement began as pure necessity. "I can't miss work," Adela explained the morning after Renee's departure, exhaustion making her voice flat. "I'm already on thin ice at the firm for taking so much time after Marcus died. But I can't afford daycare for twins. So here's what I'm thinking. If you're staying, we make this work for everyone." Marilyn sat at the kitchen table, Zara sleeping peacefully in her arms. "What do you need?" "Help with the girls during the day." "That's it. In exchange, you have a safe place to stay while we sort out the legal mess." "That's not equal," James protested. "You're giving us everything. We should contribute more." "You're giving me the ability to keep my job and not lose my mind," Adela interrupted. "Trust me, that's everything." The first week revealed an unexpected harmony. Marilyn moved through the house with quiet efficiency, seeming to know exactly when Zara needed changing or when Nia's fussiness meant gas rather than hunger. She had a grandmother's instinct that Adela was still learning. James appointed himself the house's handyman. He fixed the leaking faucet Adela had ignored for months, replaced the burnt-out porch light, and organized the cluttered garage. He did the grocery shopping, navigating aisles with careful attention to sales, stretching Adela's budget further than she'd managed alone. By the second week, Adela came home to find dinner prepared, laundry folded, and both babies content. The house felt alive again, not like it had with Marcus, but alive in a different way. "How was your day?" Marilyn asked, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Adela almost broke down. Nobody had asked her that in months. "Long," she managed. "Thank you for this. For all of it. Thank you for giving us purpose," Marilyn replied softly. "I thought we'd lost everything. But caring for these babies, it feels like a second chance." Attorney Keisha called with updates that grew progressively worse. Victoria had fled to Miami, purchased a condo with cash, and was burning through money at an alarming rate. Luxury purchases, jewelry, expensive restaurants. "She's spending like there's no tomorrow," Keisha reported. "I've filed criminal charges, but she's not coming back voluntarily. We'll need extradition, which takes time." "How much time?" "Months. Maybe longer. And the money she's spent is gone, Adela. We might recover the house eventually, but their savings? That's vanished." Then the investigations began. The CPS worker arrived on a Tuesday morning, clipboard in hand and suspicion in her eyes. Ms. Davis was a middle-aged black woman whose expression hardened the moment she saw Marilyn holding Nia. "Mrs. Pierce, we received a complaint about the living situation here," she said, not taking the offered seat. "Concerns about the appropriateness of having your children cared for by non-family members." "They're helping me while I work," Adela said carefully. "The babies are thriving." Ms. Davis walked through the house, examining everything. She pulled Adela into the kitchen, lowering her voice. "Mrs. Pierce, I need to be direct. Are you sure about this arrangement? Having white strangers caring for your black daughters. They're not strangers anymore. But they're white." Ms. Davis's voice carried an edge. "Your children need to see themselves reflected in their caregivers. They need cultural competency. They need love and safety," Adela interrupted. "Which is what they're getting." The APS worker arrived the next day. Mr. Peterson, a white man in his 50s who looked at Adela like she was a predator. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison," he said, barely acknowledging Adela's presence. "I need to speak with you alone about your living situation." "We can speak in front of Adela," James said firmly. "She's not hiding anything." Mr. Peterson's questions dripped with insinuation. Was Adela charging them rent? Controlling their finances? Restricting their movements? Had they signed anything? Did they feel safe? "Young man," Marilyn finally snapped. "This woman saved our lives when our own daughter robbed us blind. She's opened her home and her heart to us. If you're suggesting she's somehow taking advantage, you're insulting the only person who's shown us genuine kindness." That evening, after both investigators had left with their suspicions documented, the three of them sat in the living room while the twins slept. The tension that had been building for weeks finally demanded acknowledgement. "I need to say something," James began, his voice heavy. "And it's uncomfortable, but it needs to be said." Adela braced herself. When you first approached us at that bus stop, my very first thought, was suspicion. A black woman wanting to help us? I was raised to believe. He faltered, shame coloring his face. I was raised to see that as dangerous. James, Marilyn started, but he held up his hand. No, I need to say this. I've spent my whole life with prejudices I pretended I didn't have. Crossed the street when black men approached. Assumed the worst. Voted for policies that hurt communities like yours because I thought it didn't affect me. Marilyn's voice was barely a whisper. I voted against school integration in 1963. I was young. I told myself I was protecting my children's education, but the truth is, I was racist. The silence stretched between them. Adela felt anger and hurt warring with the gratitude she'd developed for these two people. Why are you telling me this now? She finally asked. Because you deserve the truth, James said. And because you're teaching us what we should have learned 60 years ago. That kindness doesn't have a color. That family is about showing up, not about matching skin tones. You've given us more than shelter. You've given us a chance to be better than we were. I don't know if I can forgive 60 years of racism with a speech, Adela said honestly. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Marilyn replied. I'm asking for the chance to do better. To help raise your daughters to see the world differently than we did. To break something that should have been broken in us a long time ago. Adela looked at these two elderly white people who'd become essential to her survival, who'd helped her crawl out of grief's deepest pit, who loved her daughters like their own grandchildren. Then do better, she said quietly. Starting now. Starting every day. When Keisha suggested legal guardianship to protect them all, Adela knew it meant inviting more scrutiny, more judgment, more ammunition for people who already questioned her choices. Are you sure? Keisha asked. This is going to be public. People will talk. Let them talk. The court hearing felt like a trial. Judge Morrison, a stern white man in his 60s, reviewed the petition with obvious skepticism. Mrs. Pierce, you're 32 years old, widowed for months, caring for infant twins, and now you want legal responsibility for two elderly people you've known for 6 weeks? Yes, Your Honor. And you don't find this unusual? I find it necessary. The judge turned to James and Marilyn. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, you have children of your own. Why aren't they caring for you? One robbed us, Your Honor, James said steadily. The other barely returned our calls until he heard we lost everything. Adela Pierce has done more for us in 6 weeks than our biological children have done in 6 years. Keisha presented testimony from neighbors who'd watched the transformation of Adela's household. Mrs. Chun from next door described seeing James and Marilyn at the park with the twins, the obvious love between them. The pediatrician testified that Zara and Nia were thriving, clearly well cared for. Your Honor, this is what family looks like in the 21st century, Keisha argued. Not perfect, not conventional, but built on mutual care and genuine love. Mrs. Pierce isn't exploiting anyone. She's building something beautiful from broken pieces. But it was Ms. Davis, the CPS worker, whose testimony surprised everyone. Your Honor, I came to this investigation with concerns. I left with admiration. Those babies are loved, safe, and thriving. Mrs. Pierce has created a home where generational wisdom meets genuine need. If we only recognized families that look traditional, we'd miss seeing love that transcends our narrow expectations. Judge Morrison reviewed his notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he looked up. Mrs. Pierce, I've seen a lot of unusual arrangements in this courtroom, but I've rarely seen one where every witness speaks with such conviction about the genuine bond between the parties. He paused. Love doesn't see color, and neither should this court. Guardianship approved. The gavel came down, making it official. Outside the courthouse, James embraced Adela while Marilyn held the twins. People stared, this interracial cluster of celebration drawing attention and judgment in equal measure. We're family now, James said, his voice thick with emotion. Really, truly family. We always were, Adela replied, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. We just made it legal. That night, with official documents declaring their chosen family legitimate in the eyes of the law, Adela sat in the nursery rocking Zara while Marilyn settled Nia. Through the window, she could see James fixing the porch railing, humming to himself. This wasn't the family she'd planned. It wasn't the one she'd lost, but it was the one she'd built from rubble and grief, and the radical choice to love across every boundary that should have kept them apart. And somehow, impossibly, it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The phone call came on a Thursday evening, 3 months after the guardianship was approved. "This is Robert Harrison. I want to speak with my parents. Now." Adela handed the phone to James, watching his face shift from surprise to resignation as his eldest son's voice grew loud enough for her to hear across the room. "Dad, what the hell is going on? I get a call from Victoria's lawyer saying some woman has guardianship over you? Have you lost your mind?" "Robert, it's not like that. I'm flying out there. Don't do anything until I arrive." 2 days later, Robert Harrison stood on Adela's porch, a tall man in his late 40s, wearing an expensive suit and an expression of barely contained fury. His wife Patricia, equally well-dressed, stood beside him with arms crossed. James opened the door. "Robert, Patricia, please come in." "We're not here for pleasantries," Robert interrupted, pushing past his father. His eyes landed on Adela, who stood in the hallway holding Nia. His gaze traveled over her, black woman, natural hair, simple clothes, modest house, and his jaw tightened. "You must be Adela Pierce." "I am. Would you like to sit?" "What I'd like is an explanation." Robert's voice was cold. "What are you getting out of this? Their social security checks? Access to whatever assets Victoria didn't steal." Adela felt the accusation like a slap. "Mr. Harrison, your parents needed help. So you swooped in and convinced a vulnerable elderly couple to sign over guardianship? How convenient." "Robert." Marilyn emerged from the kitchen, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to her that way? Mom, you can't see what's happening here? You think we don't see what this is?" Robert's eyes flicked between Adela and his parents, and the unspoken accusation hung heavy. "Asterisk, you can't trust her. Look at what she is. Asterisk." James stepped forward, his voice steel. "Robert, I want you to listen very carefully. This woman saved our lives when your sister robbed us of everything. She opened her home, cared for us, fought for us. She's been more family in 3 months than you've been in 3 years. Dad, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in decades." James's hands shook with emotion. "Where were you when Victoria was stealing from us? Where were you when we were abandoned on that bench? You didn't answer our calls, didn't visit, didn't care, until it became inconvenient for you." Patricia's voice was softer but no less cutting. "James, we're just concerned about appropriate care. Cultural compatibility. Whether this environment is really suitable." "Say what you mean," Adela said quietly, shifting Nia to her other hip. "You're concerned that your white parents are living with a black woman. Just say it." The silence was deafening. "We're staying," Marilyn said firmly. "And if you can't accept that, you know where the door is." Robert and Patricia left, but not before Robert promised, "This isn't over." 3 weeks later, Victoria's attorney filed a motion to overturn the guardianship. The petition used language that made Adela's blood boil. Concerns about cultural incompatibility, questions about appropriate racial environment for elderly clients, potential exploitation across socioeconomic and racial lines. Keisha slammed the document on her desk. "They're using racism dressed up as concern. This is going to get ugly, Adela." "How ugly?" "National news ugly. Black widow versus white family ugly." Keisha's expression was grim. "Victoria's playing the victim, claiming she's protecting her parents from exploitation. The media will eat it up." She was right. Within days, news vans appeared on Adela's street. Headlines screamed, "Guardianship battle raises questions about interracial care. Family fights to reclaim parents from stranger's home. Black caregiver accused of exploiting elderly white couple." The comment sections were vicious. Half accused Adela of being a con artist preying on vulnerable white seniors. The other half accused the Harrison children of racist attacks disguised as concern. Nobody seemed interested in the truth. The twins, now a year old and starting to walk, became part of the spectacle. Photographers caught images of James pushing their stroller, of Marilyn holding their hands at the park. The captions were always loaded. Elderly white couple caring for black children. Stockholm Syndrome or genuine bond? The courthouse was packed for the hearing. Victoria sat at the plaintiff's table, playing the role of concerned daughter perfectly. tears, trembling hands, designer clothes that whispered respectability. Her attorney, a silver-haired man named Whitmore, opened with calculated precision. Your Honor, we're not questioning Mrs. Pierce's character. We're questioning the appropriateness of this arrangement. My clients are elderly, white, from a generation with different cultural values. Can they truly receive appropriate care in an environment so fundamentally different from their background? You mean a black household, Judge Rivera said flatly. She was a Latina woman in her 50s who'd already reviewed the case files with obvious skepticism toward the petition. I mean culturally incompatible, Your Honor, Whitmore replied smoothly. Keisha stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call James Harrison to the stand. James walked to the witness box with quiet dignity, placing his hand on the Bible with steady resolve. Mr. Harrison, can you describe your relationship with Mrs. Pierce? She's my daughter in every way that matters, James said simply. Not by blood, but by choice. By love. By the fact that she showed up when no one else did. And do you feel exploited? Taken advantage of? I feel saved. I feel valued. I feel like I have purpose again. His voice strengthened. Adela Pierce gave us our dignity back when our own children stole it. Objection. Whitmore stood. The witness is being inflammatory. The witness is telling his truth, Judge Rivera said. Continue, Mr. Harrison. My daughter Victoria robbed us of everything. My son Robert ignored us for years. But Adela, this woman who owed us nothing, who had every reason to walk past us on that bench, she chose to care. She taught us what love truly looks like. Love that crosses every boundary, every prejudice, every learned fear. Marilyn's testimony was equally powerful. She described coming home to an empty house after Marcus died, to Adela's walls of grief, and how caring for the twins had given her reason to live. I was raised to see people like Adela as different as other, Marilyn said, tears streaming down her face. I voted against integration. I crossed streets to avoid black neighbors. I am ashamed of who I was. But Adela loved us anyway. She's teaching me, at 68 years old, how to be the person I should have been my whole life. The twins were brought into the courtroom, walking uncertainly between James and Marilyn, reaching for them with the trust that only children can show. The image was undeniable. These children knew love when they felt it. Neighbor testimony came from both sides of the racial divide. Mrs. Chun, the Korean-American neighbor, described watching the family at the park. You see love or you don't. I see love. Brother Malcolm from Adela's church, who'd initially been skeptical, testified about the transformation he'd witnessed. I thought Sister Adela had lost her way, helping white folks when our community needs help. But I was wrong. She showed us what it means to love beyond tribalism. That's not betrayal, that's Christ-like. Even Ms. Davis, the CPS worker, returned to testify. I investigated this family expecting to find exploitation. I found the opposite. Those children are thriving in a home filled with love that transcends race. Victoria took the stand, playing her role perfectly, the concerned daughter fighting to protect her parents from a manipulator. But under Keisha's cross-examination, the facade cracked. Ms. Harrison, where were you when your parents were abandoned on that bench? I had an emergency. You were in Miami purchasing a $75,000 Mercedes with money you stole from them. That's not. You defrauded your parents of $350,000, left them with nothing, and now you're claiming to be concerned about their welfare. Victoria's composure shattered. They were going to die and leave everything to Robert. I deserved my share. The courtroom erupted. Judge Rivera's gavel came down hard. In his closing argument, Whitmore made one final appeal. Your Honor, this arrangement goes against the natural order of family. The natural order? Judge Rivera's voice was ice. The natural order is children caring for their parents. Ms. Harrison violated that when she robbed them. Mr. Harrison violated it through neglect. Mrs. Pierce honored it through choice. She looked directly at Victoria. You have some nerve walking into this courtroom wrapped in the rhetoric of concern after what you've done. Then she turned to Robert and Patricia, who sat rigid in the gallery. And you, Mr. Harrison, where were you? You had years to be present for your parents. You chose not to. Don't disguise your guilt as worry about racial compatibility. Judge Rivera's ruling was unequivocal. This court will not let prejudice masquerade as concern. Love doesn't require matching skin tones. Family doesn't require shared ancestry. What it requires is commitment, care, and presence, all of which Mrs. Pierce has demonstrated and which the biological children have failed to provide. She looked at Adela, James, and Marilyn. Guardianship is upheld. Furthermore, I'm ordering Victoria Harrison to repay the stolen funds, and I'm referring this case for criminal prosecution. The gavel fell. Outside the courthouse, Robert approached Adela while Patricia held back, crying. He struggled for words. I saw you in there with them. How they look at you. How my parents defend you. His voice cracked. I've never seen them look at me like that. Like I matter that much. You could have mattered, Adela said quietly. You still could. But it requires showing up. Actually showing up. Patricia came forward, mascara running. We neglected them. We let our careers, our lives, our comfort matter more than our parents. And we almost let our prejudice justify it. She looked at Adela. Thank you for being better than we were. As news vans captured the moment, this black woman, these elderly white people, this biological son learning what family really meant, Adela felt something shift in the national conversation. The headlines changed. Family redefined. Love wins in guardianship battle. Judge rejects racial arguments in favor of chosen family. That night, with James and Marilyn putting the twins to bed and Robert's promise to visit monthly still hanging in the air, Adela stood in her kitchen. The same kitchen that had been empty of life a year ago. Her family looked nothing like she'd imagined. It had been built from abandonment, grief, and the revolutionary choice to love across every divide society said should separate them. But it was real. It was validated. And it was hers. Some families are born. Others are built, brick by brick, choice by choice, love by love. And sometimes those are the families that change the world. The promotion came 6 months after the court battle, when Adela had finally stopped expecting good things to happen. Senior paralegal, her boss Mr. Hendricks said, sliding the offer letter across his desk. 30% raise, better benefits, and honestly, Adela, you've earned it 10 times over. The way you've handled everything this past year. Adela stared at the numbers, thinking of all the nights she'd lain awake worrying about money, about keeping the lights on, about providing for her expanding family. Thank you, she managed, her voice thick. That evening, she came home to find James teaching the twins to stack blocks while Marilyn prepared dinner. The house smelled like pot roast and something sweet baking, normalcy that still felt miraculous. I got promoted, Adela announced. The celebration was immediate and genuine. James picked up both girls, dancing them around the living room. Marilyn hugged Adela tight, whispering, Marcus would be so proud. Life settled into a rhythm. Imperfect but beautiful. James took the twins to the park every morning, pushing their stroller past curious neighbors. At first, the stairs had made Adela anxious, but James seemed unbothered. Let them look, he'd say. Let them see what love looks like. Still, some looks cut deeper than others. One morning, James returned earlier than usual, his face troubled. The twins were uncharacteristically quiet in their stroller. What happened? Adela asked. A woman at the park. White lady, expensive yoga clothes. His jaw tightened. She asked if I was the babysitter. When I said they were my granddaughters, she said, Oh, adopted then? When I explained our family, she pulled her own children away. Said something to another mother about that situation not being appropriate for children to see. Adela felt the familiar anger rise. Did you? I held my head high and stayed until we were ready to leave, James said firmly. Those girls will not see me run from ignorance. But Della, it hurt. After everything, after changing, after learning, she looked at me like I was doing something wrong. Like loving these babies was somehow suspicious. Marilyn had her own stories. Shopping with Adela at the grocery store, she'd noticed black shoppers watching them with suspicion or disappointment. One older black woman had approached Adela directly. Baby, you know she probably voted for people who hurt us, right? The woman said quietly, gesturing toward Marilyn. You taking care of them when our elders need help? Adela had wanted to explain, to defend, but Marilyn touched her arm gently. She's right to question, Marilyn said later in the car. I did vote for people who hurt her community. I did support systems that caused harm. She has every right to be angry. But you've changed. Change doesn't erase history, dear. It just means we do better going forward. Her suspicion was earned by people like me. All we can do is prove, through actions, that we're different now. Through it all, the twins grew. At 15 months, Nia said her first word. Gamma, reaching for Marilyn. 2 days later, Zara pointed at James and said Gampa clear as day. Adela had expected to feel jealous. These weren't Marcus's parents, weren't even her blood. But watching her daughters love and be loved so completely, she felt only gratitude. The pediatrician's appointment that changed everything was routine. Dr. Sarah Chen had retired, and the practice assigned them to her nephew who'd recently joined the clinic. Dr. Michael Chen was a man in his mid-30s with kind eyes and gentle hands as he examined the twins. He asked questions about their development, their diet, their home environment. And you're? He asked, looking between Adela, James, and Marilyn with obvious confusion. Family, Adela said simply. Something in her tone made him look up. That's a story, I'm guessing? A long one. By the end of the appointment, Michael had heard the basics. His response was immediate and genuine. That's remarkable. My aunt always said families are built by who shows up, not who shares DNA. As Adela was leaving, Michael added, My aunt also said I should ask interesting people to coffee. Would you be interested in coffee? Just coffee. To talk. About families and showing up and... Are you asking me on a date, Dr. Chin? His smile was shy. Very awkwardly, yes. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became walks in the park. Slowly, carefully, Adela learned Michael's story. Wife dead from breast cancer 2 years prior, 5-year-old son Christopher being raised by a single father. The same crushing loneliness that Adela knew too well. I thought I'd never want to risk it again, Michael admitted during their 4th date. Loving someone, losing them. But then I met you. And your extraordinary family. And I thought maybe that's the point. To risk it. To choose love anyway. Meeting James and Marilyn was Michael's idea. If they're your family, I want to know them. The dinner was awkward at first. Christopher, Michael's son, shy and uncertain. But within minutes, Marilyn had him laughing, and James was showing him how to build towers with blocks while the twins helped by knocking them down. Your family is beautiful, Michael said quietly to Adela, watching Christopher play with her daughters while an elderly white couple doted on all 3 children. Different but beautiful. You don't find it strange? I find it hopeful, Michael replied. That people can choose each other across every divide. That family can be this. He gestured at the living room. 3 cultures, 3 generations, bound by nothing but choice and love. The courtship developed slowly, carefully. Michael and Christopher became regular fixtures at Sunday dinners. James taught Christopher woodworking in the garage. Marilyn taught him to bake cookies. The twins adored their new playmate. 18 months after that first coffee date, Michael arrived for dinner with Christopher dressed in a tiny suit, unusually nervous. I have something to ask, Michael said, and before Adela could process what was happening, he was on one knee in front of everyone, James and Marilyn, the twins, Christopher, even Robert and Patricia who were visiting. Adela Pierce, you taught me that family isn't something you're born into, it's something you build. I want to build with you. Will you marry me? Through tears, Adela said yes. The engagement brought unexpected emotion. James pulled Adela aside later that evening. I'd like to walk you down the aisle, he said, his voice rough. If that's appropriate. If you want someone else. There's no one else I'd want, Adela interrupted, embracing him. You're my father in every way that matters. Marilyn insisted on helping plan despite her age. She threw herself into details, flowers, seating arrangements, coordinating with Robert and Patricia who'd promised to help. I never got to plan Victoria's wedding properly, Marilyn admitted one evening, surrounded by wedding magazines. She eloped, shut us out. This feels like getting to do it right. If that makes sense. The wedding became more than a marriage. It became a statement. Black traditions woven with Chinese customs. A gospel choir and traditional Chinese tea ceremony. James walking Adela down the aisle while Michael's father walked him. Marilyn as honorary grandmother of the bride. Christopher as ring bearer, the twins as flower girls in matching dresses. The guest list was a portrait of their chosen family, Keisha, who'd fought for them legally. Mrs. Chun from next door. Brother Malcolm from church. Michael's large Chinese-American family. Robert and Patricia, bringing their own children to meet their grandparents properly. Even Renee came, standing in the back, crying silently. After the ceremony, she approached Adela. "I was wrong," Renee said simply. "About all of it. About them. About you. About what family means." She looked at James and Marilyn dancing with the twins. "You built something beautiful. I'm sorry I couldn't see it." The reception celebrated everything they'd become. Gospel music and Chinese folk songs, soul food and dim sum, multiple generations and cultures dancing together. Michael's toast brought everyone to tears. "I married into a family that proves love is stronger than prejudice, that choice is stronger than blood, that showing up is stronger than shared history." Adela didn't just say yes to me. She said yes to believing, again, that love is worth the risk. Robert approached his parents as the evening wound down. "I'm moving back," he announced. "Patricia got a transfer to Atlanta. We want to be close. To actually be family, not just related." James embraced his son, decades of distance finally bridged. That night, as Adela and Michael prepared to leave for a brief honeymoon, with 5 eager grandparents, James, Marilyn, and Michael's parents, ready to care for the children, Adela paused at the door. Her house held everyone she loved. Her daughters asleep upstairs. Her parents, chosen and true. Her new son, Christopher. Her new husband. Her reconciled sister. Her expanding family that defied every boundary. "You okay?" Michael asked. "Marcus would be happy," Adela said, surprising herself with the certainty. "Not that I'm remarrying, but that I'm living again. Really living." "You think he'd approve?" "I think he'd love that I chose love over fear. That I built this." She gestured at the house, at everything it represented. "That I taught our daughter's family can look like anything, as long as it's built on showing up." Michael kissed her forehead. "Then let's keep showing up. For all of them." As they drove away, Adela looked back at the house full of light and laughter. Black, white, Asian American, young and old, bound together by nothing but the revolutionary choice to love across every divide. She'd lost Marcus. She'd lost her old life. She'd lost the family she'd planned. But she'd found something else. Something harder to build but stronger once built. She'd found that grief could transform into purpose. That loss could become the foundation for new love. That family was whatever you made it, whoever you chose, however imperfect and beautiful and complicated it became. Life had started again. Not the life she'd imagined. Something better. Something real. Something that proved every single day that love, real love, chosen love, brave love, could bridge any divide. And sometimes that was everything. Adela was 6 months pregnant with Isaiah when James collapsed in the kitchen. One moment he was helping Marilyn prepare lunch, laughing at something Christopher had said. The next he was doubled over, clutching his abdomen, his face drained of color. "James!" Marilyn's scream brought everyone running. Michael was there in seconds, doctor's instincts taking over. "James, where's the pain? Show me." James pointed to his right side, upper abdomen. His breathing was shallow, sweat beading on his forehead. "We need to get him to the hospital. Now." Michael's voice was calm but urgent. "Adela, call 911. Marilyn, stay with him, keep him talking." The ambulance ride felt endless. Marilyn held James's hand while Adela followed in the car with Michael and the children. The twins, now 3 years old, sensed something was wrong and stayed unnaturally quiet. "Mama, is Gampa sick?" Zara asked, her voice small. "Yes, baby. But the doctors are going to help him." At the emergency room, tests came quickly, blood work, imaging, examinations. Michael stood with the ER doctor, studying scans while Adela held Marilyn, who'd started shaking. "Acute cholecystitis," Michael said quietly, returning to them. "His gallbladder is severely infected. It needs to come out immediately." "Surgery?" Marilyn's voice cracked. "Emergency surgery. The infection could spread, cause sepsis." Michael crouched before Marilyn, taking her hands. "I need you to understand, at his age, with his health history, there are risks. Significant risks." The surgeon, Dr. Patel, was direct when she arrived. "Mr. Harrison is 74 with underlying cardiovascular issues. The infection is aggressive. I need to operate within the hour, but I need you to understand the odds. 70% survival rate. And if he survives, recovery will be difficult." Marilyn's face crumpled. 50 years of marriage, potentially ending on a hospital gurney because of an infected organ. Do what you need to do, she managed. Just please. Robert arrived as they were prepping James for surgery, having caught the first flight from Oregon when Adela called. He burst into the waiting room, wild-eyed, and went straight to his mother. Mom, I'm here. I'm here. Your father. Marilyn couldn't finish. They wheeled James past on a gurney. He was semi-conscious from pain medication, but his eyes found Marilyn's. Love you, Mari, he slurred. Always, always loved you. Don't you dare say goodbye, James Harrison, Marilyn said fiercely, walking alongside the gurney. You come back to me. You hear me? You come back. Then he was gone through the double doors, and all they could do was wait. The surgical waiting room became their world. Adela sat with her hands on her pregnant belly, feeling Isaiah kick, thinking about how James had been there when she'd announced this pregnancy. How he'd cried, saying it felt like getting another chance at being a grandfather from the beginning. Christopher climbed into Adela's lap, something he rarely did anymore at 5 years old. Is Grandpa James going to die? The waiting room went silent. Everyone looked at Adela, Marilyn, Robert, Michael, the twins. Adela took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She could lie, cushion the truth, protect them from fear. Or she could do what James had taught her, meet hard things with honesty. We don't know, honey, she said quietly, pulling Christopher close. He's very sick, and the surgery is dangerous. But we're all here together. And whatever happens, we'll face it together. As a family. Christopher nodded against her shoulder. Can I pray? Of course you can. The 5-year-old's prayer was simple. God, please help Grandpa James. We need him. Amen. Amen, the family echoed. 4 hours passed. Then 5. Michael checked with the surgical nurses every 30 minutes, his medical knowledge both a comfort and a curse. He knew exactly what complications might be delaying things. The twins fell asleep on the waiting room chairs. Robert paced. Marilyn sat perfectly still, hands clasped, lips moving in silent prayer. Finally, Dr. Patel emerged, still in scrubs, looking exhausted. He made it through surgery, she said, and the collective exhale was audible. But he's not out of the woods. The infection was worse than the scans showed. We removed the gallbladder, cleaned out the infection, but his age, the next 48 hours are critical. If he develops complications, pneumonia, blood clots, sepsis, his chances drop significantly. But he's alive, Marilyn said. He's alive right now. He is. And he's a fighter. They let Marilyn see him first, in the ICU. Adela watched through the window as Marilyn approached James's bed. Tubes and monitors and machines keeping him alive, but alive nonetheless. Marilyn took his hand and bent close, whispering things only a wife of 50 years could say. The next 2 weeks were a blur of hospital shifts. Michael used his medical connections to ensure James got the best care, consulting with specialists, monitoring every detail. Adela managed logistics, coordinating who stayed at the hospital when, who watched the children, who brought food. Robert, to everyone's surprise, proved invaluable. He took unpaid leave from work, stayed in Atlanta, sat with his father through the nights. I wasn't there before, he told Adela one night in the hospital cafeteria. When they needed me, when Victoria was stealing from them, when they were abandoned. I wasn't there. His voice broke. I can't change that. But I can be here now. That's all any of us can do, Adela replied. Show up. Starting now. The twins made get-well cards with Christopher's help. Crayon drawings of Gampa, surrounded by hearts and flowers. They weren't allowed in the ICU, but the nurses taped the pictures to James's wall, where he could see them when he woke. Marilyn never left except when the nurses physically insisted. She slept in the chair beside his bed, held his hand through every procedure, talked to him constantly even when he was unconscious. We were supposed to have more time, she told Adela one afternoon, both of them sitting vigil while James slept fitfully. 50 years wasn't enough. I need more. I need to see your son born. I need to watch the girls start school. I need. Her voice cracked. I need my husband. On day 6, James opened his eyes and recognized them. Mari, I'm here, love. I'm right here. Did I miss anything? Marilyn laughed through her tears. Not a thing. We've all been right here, waiting for you. James's recovery was slow and painful. The infection had ravaged his body, and at 74, healing took time. But gradually, incrementally, he improved. Michael monitored his vitals obsessively, adjusting pain medication, consulting with the surgical team. "You're doing great, Dad," he'd say, and the word Dad made James's eyes water every time. After 2 weeks, they moved James from ICU to a regular room. After 3 weeks, they brought him home. The house transformed into a recovery center. Michael set up a hospital bed in the living room so James could be part of family life. Adela organized medication schedules, wound care, physical therapy appointments. The role reversal was complete. James, who'd fixed their house and cared for the twins and given them stability, now needed them to do everything. At first, his pride resisted. "I'm supposed to be helping you," he said one morning as Adela helped him to the bathroom. "Family helps each other," Adela replied firmly. "That's not a one-way street, James. You've earned the right to be cared for." Christopher appointed himself James's daily companion. Every afternoon after kindergarten, he'd climb onto the hospital bed and read to James. Picture books at first, then chapter books as James grew stronger. "You're a good reader, Christopher," James said one day, his voice still weak. "You taught me lots of words," Christopher replied matter-of-factly, "when you were teaching me woodworking. Now I'm teaching you stories while you get better." The twins, not fully understanding what had happened but knowing Gampa needed gentle care, brought him toys, patted his hand, sang him songs they'd learned at preschool. Robert extended his stay indefinitely. "Patricia and the kids are coming next month," he told his parents. "We're relocating. I talked to my company. I can work remotely from Atlanta. We're coming home." James's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Robert interrupted. "I almost lost you. I almost lost my chance to actually be your son, not just your biological child." He looked at Adela. "She showed me what that means. What showing up looks like. I want to learn." 3 months after the surgery, James was strong enough to sit in the backyard while the twins played. Adela, heavily pregnant now, sat beside him while Marilyn brought out lemonade. "You scared us," Adela said quietly. "I scared myself." James watched the girls chase butterflies. "Lying there in that hospital, I kept thinking, what if I died? What if I'd never gotten to see your son born? Never saw the girls start school?" He turned to her. "You gave us a second life, Della. When you found us on that bench, we were already dead. Just hadn't stopped breathing yet. You made us alive again." "You did the same for me," Adela replied, her hand on her belly where Isaiah kicked. "I was dead too after Marcus. Just going through motions. You and Marilyn, you taught me how to live again." Michael joined them, Christopher on his shoulders. "How's the patient?" "Grateful," James said. "For all of you. For this family that shouldn't exist but does. For love that's stronger than biology, stronger than blood, strong enough to survive even this." That night, with James finally sleeping peacefully in his own bed upstairs, Marilyn helping Adela with dinner preparation, and the children playing a noisy game in the living room, Adela felt something settle in her chest. Crisis had a way of revealing what was real. The pretty words, the convenient connections, those fell away when things got hard. What remained was what mattered. And what remained was this, a family built on showing up. Through surgery and fear and vigil and recovery. Through role reversals and vulnerability and the daily choice to care even when it was hard. They'd been tested by abandonment, by racism, by legal battles and public scrutiny. Now they'd been tested by the ultimate fear, loss itself. And they'd survived. Not just survived, thrived. Because that's what real family does. They show up. They stay. They care for each other through crisis and recovery, through fear and hope, through every test that tries to break what's been built. And nothing, not blood, not prejudice, not even death itself, could break what they'd chosen to build. Nothing. Isaiah arrived on a cold February morning, 6 months after James's surgery. The birth was smooth, uncomplicated, a gift after so much crisis. When they brought the baby home, James was strong enough to hold his newest grandson, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Another chance," he whispered, cradling Isaiah with practiced hands. "Another beautiful chance." Marilyn stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, watching with an expression Adela couldn't quite read. Joy, certainly. but something else. Something distant. Marilyn, Adela asked, do you want to hold him? Marilyn blinked, as if coming back from somewhere far away. Of course. Yes. What did you say his name was again? A small moment. Easy to dismiss. But it was the first crack in a dam that would soon break. Over the next months, the forgetfulness increased. Marilyn would start cooking dinner, and forget she'd already started. She'd ask the same question 3 times in an hour. She'd look at Christopher and struggle to recall his name, even though he'd been part of their family for 2 years. It's just age, James said, defensive. She's 70. People forget things. But Adela noticed the worry in his eyes. And Michael, with his medical training, noticed more. Adela, we need to talk about Marilyn, Michael said one evening after she'd gone to bed. The forgetfulness, the repetition, the way she gets confused about time. These aren't normal age-related changes. This is something else. What are you saying? I'm saying she needs to see a neurologist. Soon. James resisted at first. She's fine. She's just tired. Caring for the baby, helping with the twins. Dad. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. This isn't fatigue. You know it isn't. The neurologist was a colleague of Michael's, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, who specialized in dementia and Alzheimer's. After a battery of tests, cognitive assessments, brain scans, blood work, she delivered the diagnosis with compassionate directness. Early-onset dementia, likely Alzheimer's disease, Dr. Okonkwo said, looking at Marilyn, James, Adela, and Michael seated in her office. Given the progression we're seeing, I'd estimate she's been experiencing symptoms for at least a year, possibly longer. James's face crumbled. How long? How long until? Every case is different. Some progress slowly over a decade. Others more rapidly. There's no way to predict with certainty. Can you stop it? James asked desperately. Reverse it? We can slow the progression with medication. We can implement strategies to help her maintain quality of life longer. But no, Mr. Harrison. We can't stop it. And we can't reverse it. Marilyn, sitting between them, seemed to understand and not understand simultaneously. So I'm going to forget things? Forget people? Eventually, yes, Dr. Okonkwo said gently. But right now you're still here. Still yourself. And there are things we can do to help you stay that way as long as possible. The drive home was silent except for James's quiet crying in the passenger seat and Marilyn's occasional confused questions. Where are we going again? Did the doctor say something important? Why is James upset? That night, Adela sat at her computer until 3 a.m., researching everything about Alzheimer's care, about maintaining dignity, about keeping loved ones home as long as possible. We can do this, she told Michael when he found her surrounded by printed articles and care guides. We keep her home. We give her the best life we can, for as long as we can. Della, you have 3 children under 5, a full-time job, and now this. Are you sure? I'm sure. Her voice was steel. She stayed for me. I stay for her. That's what family means. The house reorganized around Marilyn's needs. They installed locks on doors that required keys to prevent wandering. They created visual schedules and labeled everything. They established routines that helped her remember what came next. The twins, now 4 years old, developed extraordinary patience. When Marilyn forgot their names, calling them by her daughter's names from decades ago, they'd gently correct her. I'm Zara Gamma. Remember? Zara rhymes with star. And I'm Nia. Like nice to meet ya. Christopher, at 6, became her memory keeper. He'd sit with her looking through photo albums, telling her stories about her own life when she couldn't remember. That's you and Grandpa James at your wedding, he'd say, pointing. See how happy you look. Grandpa says you wore your mother's dress. Sometimes Marilyn would nod, lost in memories. Other times, she'd look at the photo like it belonged to strangers. The lucid moments, when they came, were both gift and torment. Marilyn would suddenly be completely herself, aware, present, knowing exactly what was happening to her. I'm losing myself, she told Adela one afternoon while they folded laundry together. Bit by bit, I'm disappearing. And the worst part is knowing it, feeling it happen. We're here, Adela said, gripping her hand. However long this takes, however hard it gets, we're here. Why? Marilyn's eyes filled with tears. Why don't you give up on us? We're not your blood. We're We're just old white people who you found on a bench. You don't owe us this. You're not just anything, Adela said fiercely. You're my mother. You're Gamma to my children. You're family. And family doesn't give up. Marilyn squeezed her hand. Thank you for not giving up on us. On me. Even when I'm not me anymore. But the episodes grew harder. The moments when Marilyn didn't recognize James were devastating to watch. Who are you? She asked him one morning, backing away from his touch. Why are you in my house? Where's my husband? Mari, it's me. It's James. I am your husband. No. Her voice rose in panic. No, my husband is young. He has dark hair. You're old. Where is he? What did you do to him? It took an hour and Michael's medical intervention to calm her. When the confusion cleared and she realized what she'd done, Marilyn collapsed in James's arms, sobbing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at you, 50 years of love, and I didn't know you. How is that possible? How can I forget you? You can't forget love, James said, holding her tight, his own tears falling. The memory might go, but love stays. It stays in the bones, Mari. Even when everything else is gone. The wandering incident came without warning. Adela was at work, Michael at the clinic, James napping after a difficult night. Marilyn simply walked out the front door. The twins, playing in the living room, didn't notice until it was too late. James woke to find her gone. The panic in his voice when he called Adela was primal. She's gone. Mari's gone. I can't find her anywhere. The neighborhood mobilized black, white, Asian American, everyone searching. Police were called. Michael left work immediately. They found her 3 blocks away, standing in front of an elementary school crying. My children are in there, she told the police officer who'd found her. It's time to pick them up from school. But I can't remember which classroom. Why can't I remember which classroom? Ma'am, how old are your children? The officer asked gently. Victoria is 8. Robert is 10. Linda is 13. Thomas is 15. She looked around, confused. But this doesn't look right. This isn't their school. Where am I? Her children were in their 40s and 50s. The school she was looking for had been demolished 20 years ago. When James arrived, Marilyn looked at him with momentary recognition, then confusion, then devastating clarity. I got lost, she whispered. James, I got lost looking for children who are grown. I'm losing my mind, aren't I? We're going to keep you safe, James promised. Whatever it takes. You're not going through this alone. They installed an alarm system. Got Marilyn a GPS bracelet. Never left her unsupervised. The family's life contracted around her needs. Sometimes Marilyn called Adela Victoria and begged for forgiveness. I'm sorry I wasn't a better mother. Please don't be angry. Please come back. I'm not Victoria, sweetheart. I'm Adela, and there's nothing to forgive. But I lost her. I lost all my children. They don't visit. Why don't they visit? Robert visits every week, Adela would remind her gently. He lives in Atlanta now. He was here yesterday. Was he? Marilyn looked genuinely confused. I don't remember. The cruel progression continued. Good days became fewer. Confusion became the norm. But through it all, the family adapted. Michael and Adela tag-teamed medical care. He handled medications and physical health. She managed routines and emotional support. They hired a part-time aide to help during the day. The children learned lessons Adela never intended to teach so young. About impermanence. About loving people even as they change. About dignity that transcends capacity. Why doesn't Gamma remember us sometimes? Nia asked one night. Because her brain is sick, Adela explained. But her heart still knows love. Even when her brain forgets names, her heart remembers we're family. Does it hurt her? Zara asked. Sometimes. When she realizes what's happening. That's why we're extra patient, extra kind. We love her through the forgetting. Isaiah, now 9 months old, became an unexpected source of comfort. Marilyn might not remember names or places, but babies were universal. She'd hold him, sing old lullabies, smile with genuine joy. Sweet baby, she'd murmur. Whose baby are you? He's your grandson, James would say gently. Isaiah. Adela's son. Adela. I know that name. Don't I? It was Christopher who articulated what they were all learning. After a particularly difficult evening, when Marilyn had been agitated and confused, He climbed into Adela's lap. "Grandma Marilyn is teaching us something important," he said seriously. "What's that, honey?" "That loving someone isn't just when they're fun or happy or remember things. It's loving them when they're confused and scared and lost. That's when they need it most." Out of the mouths of children. 1 year into the diagnosis, Marilyn had more bad days than good. But on a clear autumn afternoon, she had a moment of stunning clarity. The whole family was in the backyard, James beside her, the children playing, Michael grilling, Adela rocking Isaiah. Marilyn looked around and truly saw them all. Her face showed recognition, understanding, gratitude. "I know what's happening to me," she said quietly. "And I know I won't always know. But right now, in this moment, I want you all to hear me." Everyone drew closer. "You saved us, Adela. You could have walked past us on that bench. Instead, you gave us everything: family, purpose, love. You taught us what we should have learned 60 years ago. And now you're loving me as I disappear." Tears ran down her weathered face. "That's the most profound gift anyone has ever given me. The gift of being worth loving, even as I become less and less myself." "You're always yourself to us," Adela said, kneeling beside her. "Memory doesn't define worth. You taught me that. You loved my babies when I was too broken to love myself. Now we love you. All of you. Whatever remains. That's what family does." Marilyn smiled, lucid and present. "Remember this moment. When I don't remember anymore, you remember for me." "We will," James promised, holding her hand. "We'll carry every memory, every moment, every piece of you. You're not disappearing, Mari. You're becoming part of all of us." As the sun set over their chosen family, black, white, Asian American, young and old, bound by nothing but the revolutionary choice to love across every divide, Adela understood something fundamental. Love doesn't require memory. It requires presence. And they were all there, together, loving Marilyn through the fading of her light. Because that's what family means. Showing up when it's hard. Staying when it hurts. Loving through the forgetting. Always. 2 years into Marilyn's diagnosis, the woman who had once been so vibrant was almost gone. She no longer recognized anyone consistently. James was sometimes her husband, sometimes a stranger, sometimes her father who'd been dead 40 years. Adela was Victoria, then a nurse, then someone whose name she couldn't recall, but whose face seemed familiar. The twins were those sweet girls, but rarely Zara and Nia. Christopher was the boy who reads. Isaiah was simply the baby. She needed help with everything: dressing, bathing, eating, using the bathroom. The wandering had become dangerous. They'd found her trying to leave the house at 3 a.m. in her nightgown. She'd become agitated, sometimes aggressive when confused. The family was exhausted. Adela had cut her work hours to part-time. Michael was taking emergency calls at home to be available. James, now 76, looked 10 years older from the strain of watching his wife disappear while trying to provide round-the-clock care. The night Marilyn fell while James was sleeping, breaking her wrist, Michael and Adela had the conversation they'd been avoiding. "We can't keep her safe anymore," Michael said quietly, after they'd returned from the emergency room at 4 a.m. "She needs 24-hour medical supervision. We need to consider a memory care facility." "No." James's voice was absolute. "I promised her. For better or worse, in sickness and health. I promised I'd care for her until the end." "And you are caring for her," Adela said gently. "But James, she needs more than we can give her now. She needs professional medical care, safety measures we don't have. She needs her family." James's voice broke. "She needs to be home." "She doesn't know where home is anymore," Michael said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Last week she asked me when we were going back to the house she grew up in. The one that was demolished in 1985. Home isn't a place for her now. It's wherever she feels safe. And we can't provide that level of care." The decision took 2 weeks and multiple family meetings. Robert flew in to support it. Christopher, at 8 years old, asked questions that cut to the heart. "If we keep Grandma Marilyn here and something bad happens because we can't help her, would that be loving her?" Finally, James relented. Not because he wanted to, but because loving Marilyn meant admitting what she needed was beyond what they could give. "It's not abandonment," Adela told him as they toured the memory care facility. A place with locked doors for safety, trained staff, medical care available instantly. It's ensuring she gets what she needs. That's love, James. Love looks like knowing when to ask for help. I promise to care for her until the end, James repeated, his face devastated. And you will, Adela insisted. You'll visit every day. You'll still be her husband, still be present. But you'll also sleep at night. You'll eat meals. You'll stay healthy enough to be there for her, instead of collapsing from exhaustion and leaving her truly alone. Moving Marilyn into Magnolia Gardens memory care was one of the hardest days of any of their lives. She didn't understand what was happening, kept asking when they were going home, kept reaching for James with confused desperation. Don't leave me with strangers, she begged, clutching his hand. I'm not leaving you, James said, tears streaming down his face. I'll be back tomorrow. And the day after. Every day, Mari. Every single day. But to Marilyn, who couldn't remember yesterday or understand tomorrow, it felt like abandonment. True to his word, James visited every single day. Adela drove him each morning at 10 a.m. He'd stay until dinner time, sitting beside Marilyn's bed, even when she didn't recognize him. He read her the newspaper, the routine they'd had for 50 years of marriage. He sang their wedding song, even when she didn't remember the words. He held her hand and told her stories about their life together, creating memories for her since she couldn't hold them herself. Mr. Harrison, the care coordinator said after the first week, you don't have to come every day. She doesn't always know you're here. I know I'm here, James replied firmly. That's what matters. I made a promise. The family came on weekends. Zara and Nia, now 6 years old, brought drawings they'd made at school. They'd sit on either side of Marilyn's bed, showing her pictures of flowers and hearts and the family together. We drew you, Gamma, Zara would say patiently, even when Marilyn looked at the pictures without comprehension. So you remember you're part of our family, Nia added. Christopher, at 8, continued his role as memory keeper. He'd bring photo albums, point to pictures, tell Marilyn her own story back to her. Isaiah, now 2 years old, was perhaps the most effective visitor. Toddlers don't require recognition or memory. He'd climb into Marilyn's lap, babble his nonsense words, and she'd smile, responding to the universal language of children. Most days, Marilyn didn't know any of them. But they came anyway. Then, 6 months into her stay at Magnolia Gardens, Marilyn had one final moment of clarity. The whole family was there for a birthday celebration, James's 77th. They'd brought cake, decorations, tried to make the sterile room feel festive. Marilyn had been vacant all afternoon, staring at nothing, unresponsive. Then suddenly, her eyes focused. She looked around the room, really looked, and saw them all. James, she said clearly. My James. He was beside her instantly. I'm here, Mari. I'm always here. I know. She touched his face with trembling hands. I always know, even when I don't know. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Her gaze moved to Adela. You're the angel from the bus stop. You gave us everything. You gave me everything too, Adela managed through tears. Marilyn looked at each child, Zara, Nia, Christopher, Isaiah. My beautiful family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. The one that chose me. Her voice was getting weaker. Promise me something. All of you. Anything, they said in unison. Don't let anyone tell you family has to look one way. Your proof it can look like love. Like choice. Like showing up across every divide. She squeezed James's hand. And James, my love, when I'm gone, really gone, you stay with them. They're your family now. Promise me. Mari. Promise me. Don't be alone. Stay with the family we built. I promise, James whispered. Marilyn smiled, looked at them all one more time with clear recognition, and said, I'm so grateful I got lost enough to be found. Then the light faded from her eyes, and she was gone again, back into the fog. 1 month later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, Marilyn passed away in her sleep. James was beside her, holding her hand, reading the newspaper like always. The funeral brought together communities that rarely mixed. The black church congregation where Adela worshipped, the white suburban neighbors from James and Marilyn's former neighborhood, Michael's extended Chinese-American family, colleagues from Adela's law firm, patients from Michael's practice. The church was packed. Black, white, Asian American, young and old, all gathered to honor a woman who'd learned to love beyond the boundaries she'd been taught. Adela gave the eulogy, standing at the podium with James beside her for support. Marilyn Harrison taught me that it's never too late to change, Adela began. That prejudices learned over decades can be unlearned through love. That family isn't about biology, it's about choice, commitment, and showing up. She told their story, the bus stop, the betrayal, the guardianship battle, the years of building family across every divide. She voted against integration in 1963, Adela said, her voice strong. She'd been taught to fear people who looked like me. But when life broke her and I was the one standing there offering help, she chose to accept it. And in accepting it, she began to change. That change, that willingness to grow, to learn, to love beyond her conditioning, that was her greatest gift to us. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. After the funeral, after the reception, after everyone had left, James sat in his room at Adela's house, the house that had become home, and stared at 52 years of wedding photos. He stopped eating, stopped coming downstairs, stopped engaging with life. He's giving up, Michael told Adela after 2 weeks. Clinical depression on top of grief. We need to intervene. But it was the children who truly intervened. Zara and Nia started a routine of visiting Gampa's room, every morning before school. They'd climb into his bed, one on each side, and just be there. "Gampa, you have to eat," Zara would say, bringing him toast. "Gamma would be sad if you were sad forever," Nia added with 6-year-old logic. Christopher read to him, not asking for responses, just reading. Stories about adventure, about loss and finding, about continuing when you wanted to stop. But it was Isaiah, at 2.5, who finally broke through. The toddler simply refused to accept that Gampa James didn't want to play. He'd toddle into James's room with trucks, with blocks, with demands that couldn't be ignored. "Gampa up. Gampa play." "Not today, Isaiah." "Yes, today." Isaiah's little hands pulled on James's arms with surprising strength. "Gampa up now." And one morning, something in James broke open. He looked at this little boy who wouldn't take no for an answer, who loved him with the unconditional persistence only toddlers possess, and he couldn't say no anymore. "All right," James said quietly. "Gampa up." It wasn't instant. Healing never is. But slowly, with Michael's medical support and therapy referrals, with the children's daily love, with Adela and Michael's gentle insistence that life still had purpose, James began to emerge. 3 months after Marilyn's death, he came downstairs for family dinner. 6 months after, he was back in the garage, teaching Christopher woodworking. A year after, he was pushing Isaiah on the swing, watching Zara and Nia play soccer, living again. "She'd want this," Adela said one evening, watching him laugh at something Christopher said. "She would," James agreed. "She'd want me to keep living, keep loving, keep being part of this beautiful, impossible family we built." He looked at Adela with eyes that carried grief but also gratitude. Death came, but the family endured. That's what matters, isn't it? Not that we lost her, but that we loved her completely. And that love doesn't end just because memory does. It continues in all of us. "It does," Adela confirmed. And in that moment, sitting around the dinner table, black, white, Asian American, bound by choice and love and the shared experience of grief, they proved something fundamental. Death is inevitable. But love, real love, chosen love, brave love, that's eternal. It lives in the family we build, in the ways we show up, in the choice to keep loving even after devastating loss. Marilyn was gone, but everything she'd taught them remained. And that, in the end, was everything. 1 year after Marilyn's death, James stood at his bedroom window watching the family move through their morning routine. Adela rushing to get the twins ready for school, Michael making breakfast, Christopher helping Isaiah tie his shoes, and felt like a ghost haunting a life that had moved on without him. At 77, his mobility was declining. Arthritis made stairs difficult. His hearing was fading. He needed help with tasks that once came easily. And without Marilyn, the loneliness was crushing weight, even surrounded by family. That evening, he called everyone to the living room. "I've been thinking," James began, his voice unsteady. "I should probably move to assisted living. One of those places for seniors. I'm becoming too much of a burden." "Stop." Adela's voice was firm. "Stop right there. Della, I can barely climb the stairs." I need help with. You're not going anywhere, Michael interrupted. We'll modify the house. Install a stairlift. Convert the downstairs office to a bedroom if needed. But you're not leaving. You're our father, Christopher said simply. At 9 years old, speaking a truth the adults were dancing around. Fathers don't leave. That's what you taught us. Zara and Nia climbed onto James's lap, one on each side. Gampa, this is your home, Zara said. We need you here, Nia added. James looked at this family, this impossible, beautiful family, and felt something break open in his chest. I don't want to be a burden. Then stop thinking of yourself as one, Adela said, kneeling before him. You gave us everything when we needed it. Now we give back. That's what family does. It's not a burden, it's a privilege. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Adela rose to answer it, expecting a package or a neighbor. Instead, Victoria Harrison stood on the porch. 3 years older, thinner, wearing clothes that had seen better days. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking. But she was there. Hello, Adela, Victoria said quietly. I know I have no right to be here. But I was released last week, and I needed to see my father. To try to explain. To apologize. I understand if you won't let me in. Adela stood frozen, memories flooding back. The abandonment, the fraud, the court battle, the years of damage this woman had caused. Every instinct screamed to slam the door. But then she thought of James, lonely and grieving. She thought of Marilyn's last words about forgiveness. She thought of her own journey from rage to grace. Come in, Adela said. James stood when Victoria entered the living room. Father and daughter faced each other across 3 years and an ocean of pain. Dad, Victoria's voice cracked. I destroyed our family. I stole from you, abandoned you, tried to take you away from the people who actually loved you. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve anything from you. But I needed you to know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The silence stretched unbearable. Then James, influenced by 8 years of watching Adela choose grace over grudges, took a step forward. You're my daughter, he said simply. Come in. Victoria collapsed, sobbing. James held her as she cried, held his broken daughter the way he'd held his broken self when Adela had found him on that bench 8 years ago. They talked for hours. Victoria explained about addiction she'd hidden for years, about gambling debts that had spiraled out of control, about desperation that had twisted into cruelty. She'd served 3 years in prison, completed intensive therapy, worked in the prison's financial literacy program, teaching other inmates to avoid the mistakes she'd made. I've been in recovery for 2 years, Victoria said. Gamblers Anonymous, therapy, restitution programs. I've saved $15,000 from prison work. It's not enough, I know, but I want to give it back. All of it. Everything I can. I don't want your money, James said quietly. I want to know if you've changed. Really changed. I have. Dad, losing everything. Losing you, losing Mom without getting to say goodbye, losing my own dignity. It broke me in a way that finally let me rebuild. I'll never be who I was supposed to be. But I'm trying to be someone better than who I became. Victoria turned to Adela, tears streaming. You did what I should have done. You loved them. You showed up. You gave them family when I only took from them. I don't know how to thank you for that. For being the daughter they deserved. Adela met her eyes, saw genuine remorse, real change, the kind of transformation that comes from hitting bottom and climbing back up. It's never too late to start, Adela said. He needs family. All of us do. If you're serious about rebuilding, about being present, then start now. Today. And Victoria did. She began visiting weekly, then twice weekly. She helped with James's care, accompanied him to doctor's appointments, helped with physical therapy exercises, sat with him on hard days when grief for Marilyn overwhelmed everything. She apologized to Robert, who'd flown in when he heard she'd returned. Their reconciliation was slower, more painful, but it happened. Brother and sister, both having failed their parents in different ways, both trying to do better. She returned money bit by bit, every dollar she earned from her new job at a non-profit counseling center. She'd found her purpose helping others avoid the financial mistakes that had destroyed her life. Months passed, then years. The family expanded and contracted in the natural rhythms of life. James turned 80 surrounded by people who chose to love him. Adela and Michael. The twins, now 8 years old and full of questions about everything. Christopher, 10 years old and becoming the protective big brother to all. Isaiah at 4, endlessly curious and energetic. Robert and Patricia's children, finally knowing their grandparents. And Victoria's daughter Lily, 7 years old, tentatively joining this strange blended family. The birthday party was chaos. Multiple cultures, multiple generations, laughter in different languages, food from different traditions, all somehow working together. James pulled Adela aside as the celebration swirled around them. "You didn't just save my life that day at the bus stop," he said. "You taught me how to live, beyond prejudice, beyond fear, beyond everything I thought I knew about family and love. You taught me that transformation is always possible. Look at Victoria. I never thought, but here she is. Redeemed. Because you showed us all what grace looks like." "You taught me too," Adela replied. "That grief doesn't have to be the end. That family can be rebuilt. That love is always worth the risk." That evening, after the party had wound down and the children were scattered around the living room in various states of exhaustion, Adela watched her impossible family and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. Isaiah climbed into her lap with a question. "Mama, why does our family look so different?" Before Adela could answer, Zara spoke up from where she was reading with Christopher. "Because family isn't about who looks like you, silly. It's about who chooses to love you. And who you choose to love back," Nia added. "Like how Gamma and Gampa weren't our blood grandparents, but they loved us anyway." Christopher, now 10 and wise beyond his years, closed his book. "The best families are the ones you build on purpose, not the ones you're born into by accident." Michael smiled at Adela across the room, both of them marveling at what they'd taught these children without even trying. Victoria, sitting beside her father, spoke quietly. "I spent years destroying what I was born into. Watching all of you build something better, something chosen, it showed me what I'd thrown away. But it also showed me it's never too late to start building." She was now the director of Elder Justice Advocacy, a nonprofit she'd founded to prevent financial exploitation of seniors. She'd turned her crime into purpose, her shame into mission. Every senior she helped was a debt repaid, a life honored instead of destroyed. Robert raised his glass. "To Dad and Marilyn, who got lost and were found, who taught us all what family really means." "To Adela," Victoria added, her voice thick with emotion, "who showed up when no one else did, who chose grace when she had every right to choose anything else." "To all of us," James said, looking around the room at black faces and white faces and Asian faces, at children who would grow up knowing love transcends every boundary. "To the family we built." Later, as Adela was tucking the twins into bed, Zara asked, "Mama, do you think Gamma Marilyn can see us? From heaven?" "I think she can," Adela replied. "And I think she's proud of what we've become." "What have we become?" Nia asked. "Proof," Adela said simply. "Proof that love is stronger than prejudice. That family is about choice, not chance. That it's never too late to change, never too late to forgive, never too late to build something beautiful from broken pieces." The final moment came 3 months later, at James's request. He wanted a family photo, professional, formal, everyone together. The photographer arranged them carefully. James in the center, the patriarch of this impossible family. Adela and Michael beside him with Isaiah. The twins on his other side. Christopher standing tall behind them. Robert and Patricia with their children. Victoria and Lily. A family photo that defied every conventional expectation. Black, white, and Asian American faces. 3 generations. Blood family and chosen family. Impossible to distinguish because love had made them all the same. "Everyone say family," the photographer called. "Family," they shouted together, and the camera captured it. This moment of revolutionary love, this proof that people can choose each other across every divide, this testament to the power of showing up. That night, James looked at the photo and wept. 8 years ago, I was sitting on a bench thinking my life was over, he told Adela. I'd lost everything. My home, my savings, my dignity. I thought that was the end. "It was a beginning," Adela replied. "It was. When you approached us, this young black woman with her own grief, her own burdens, I was afraid. All my learned prejudices screamed at me to be suspicious. But you saw past my skin color to my humanity. You chose compassion over caution. And you gave me everything. We gave each other everything, Adela corrected. I was dying inside after Marcus. You and Marilyn, you brought me back to life. You taught my children what unconditional love looks like. This family, this beautiful, messy, impossible family, we built it together. James smiled, looking at the photograph. I've lived longer than I ever imagined when you found us at that bus stop. We found each other, Adela said. That's how family works. We find each other when we're lost. We choose each other when blood fails. We love each other across every boundary society says should separate us. And we prove, James added, that love, real love, revolutionary love, is stronger than anything. In the photo, they're all smiling, all belonging, all proof that family is what you make it, whoever you choose, however impossible it seems. From abandonment to belonging, from prejudice to revolutionary love, from strangers on a bench to family that changed everything. That's the legacy. That's the proof. That's what happens when someone chooses courage over caution, grace over grudges, love over fear. The world tells us family looks one way. They proved it can look like love. And love looks like this. Always.